Bole Baba Ki Jai, Saraswati Mata Ki Jai, Chandi Mata Ki Jai. So if you remember in our last talk, we destroyed the demons of too much and too little, and the Divine Mother promised that she would always be there for her children, all the devas. And what happened is the devas ruled over the earth with light and wisdom and all the spiritual practices that keep all of us connected to the divine for many, many ages. And then once again, a very strong thought, the great ego, Mahesura, also known as the buffalo demon, came and attacked the devas. He, with his thousands and thousands of soldiers under various different guises of generals, such as fickleness and jealousy and devoid of devotion and unclear understanding, and on and on. And they fought with the devas and were successful and threw them all out of the heavens and onto the earth, where they hid in terror. And so the earth and the heavens were now run by the great ego, and everyone was thinking about I and mine and forgot about their spiritual practices and their connection to the divine. Eventually, the gods said, we can't live like this, and went up to Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva and asked for their support, because this demon, the great ego, Mahesura, who is buffalo demon, had been given a boon that no one could kill him. No man, no God. So as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva heard about this, they became very irate that there was no practices going on and no one was remembering the divine source. And from them came this huge energy of light. And as the gods saw this, they too were able to remember their divine essence, and from them, light came from each one of them. And it all gathered together in a beautiful divine feminine form came. And they gave her all their weapons and jewels and ornaments, and off she went to conquer Mahesura, the great ego, because she would be able to do it, because she was not a man or a god or any of the other things that he had been promised that he would not be killed by. So the first battle went on between the Divine Mother and some of Mahesura's generals, and many of them were defeated. And now will take place more of the battle, and finally the death of Mahesura, the great ego. As I was reading this story, I was reminded of a time, because I like to really make these wars and everything practical in my life. And I remember a time, once again, in Haidakhan with Babaji, and this was once again in 1981, and the ashram there is beautiful. And with Babaji's energy there, it's so profound, and it's so, in many ways, easy to connect to this divine connection that we all carry within ourselves. And this is a special day. Myself and maybe 4 other women, for some reason, were sitting down under the peepal tree near Babaji's room with Babaji. And we were just sort of talking and laughing and having a lovely time, and I was just totally in bliss and in union with that divine. It was a very special time. And all of a sudden, Babaji got up and went to his room, and he brought out a sari, a cotton sari, red and white, and gave it to the woman sitting to my left. Her name was Mushirada. And then he sort of pranced back in and brought out another cotton sari and gave it to the woman who was sitting on my right. I believe this was Motu. And then he went in and got another cotton sari and gave it to another woman. Perhaps this was Neelam from Germany. And then he went back in and got another cotton sari and gave it to another woman. Maybe this was Indira from Germany. I can't quite remember everybody. All I remember is that then he stopped going in, and there everybody had their beautiful saris. They were so excited, and I was sitting there with nothing. And all of a sudden, I could feel inside of me those demons take over the energy that I was putting out as far as connecting with my divine spirit and with this beautiful place and being there with this divine being, Haidakhan Babaji. And all of a sudden, the demon of jealousy took over, and the demon of too little. I must not be good enough. And then jealousy, why do they get it and I don't? And comparing, and on, and anger. And also embarrassment. I became embarrassed that I didn't get one, so everybody must be thinking I'm just terrible. So all these demons took over, so instead of feeling divinely connected, all of a sudden I was pushed into this great ego of I and mine. And then it was lunchtime, and we all went up to lunch, and I stayed with the demons. This time it was a bit of hypocrisy, and I sat at lunch and pretended I was okay. I pulled back my tears, but really couldn't eat much. And I sat there thinking about, poor me, I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me? All these self-deprecating thoughts that were going on inside of me. And finally, I was wise enough to use some of my weapons, my tools that I had learned, primarily the mantra, and started repeating the mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, and in time I realized that Babaji had given me so much. One sari was not anything. What was important is that I was here in this divine space, this divine ashram, with this divine emanation of love, Babaji. And as I did my mantra, I could reconnect. And by the end of lunch, I was peaceful again and connected to the divine source. And I had won that battle with those particular demons. And I went up to my room to take a rest, and I hadn't but gotten into my sleeping bag, and all of a sudden I heard some noise outside my room. And I heard people say, "It's Babaji, it's Babaji." And I wrapped my sari around me real fast, and I opened the door. And there was Babaji standing with a beautiful gold silk brocade sari and handed it to me, acknowledging that I had won this particular battle and that the mantra and my connection to the divine was really all that mattered. So Boli Baba Ki Jai, let's go on with the reading. Meditation. The radiant body of the Mother of the Universe has the magnificence of 1,000 rising suns. She is draped in a sari of red silk. Around her neck is a garland of red skulls. Her 2 breasts have been colored with red sandalwood paste. In her 4 lotus-like hands she holds a rosary and shows the mudras of knowledge, fearlessness, and granting of boons. Her 3 eyes are shining and her bud-like mouth is extremely beautiful. Upon her head sits a crown of jewels in which the moon is situated, and she is resting upon a lotus seat. With unlimited devotion, I bow down to this goddess. The rishi said, when the great thoughts thus saw their forces being destroyed, that heroic general, devoid of clear understanding, in great anger proceeded to battle with the Mother of the Universe. That thought rained upon the goddess a cloud of arrows of various doubts, as plentiful as the waters that fall from a cloud upon Mount Meru. Then the goddess fired such a multitude of arrows that cut his arrows into pieces, and also killed his horses and his charioteer. With this she also cut his bow and his exceedingly high banner. After cutting his bow, she pierced his body with her arrows. Losing his bow, chariot, horses, and charioteer, that thought took up his sword and shield and ran after the goddess. With the sharp edge of his sword, he struck the lion on the head. With a great speed, he gave a blow to the goddess on her left arm. When that sword touched her body, it broke into pieces, and that angry thought of many considerations took a pike in his hands. And that great thought threw that glaring pike at the excellent one beyond time, just as the sun fills the heavens with dazzling luster. When the goddess saw that the pike coming at her, she too let loose her pike, which split his weapon into numerous pieces, and devoid of clear understanding, gave up his life. After the death of the valiant general in the army of the great ego, devoid of clear understanding, who had been the source of affliction to many gods, fickleness approached, mounted on a lion. He attacked the goddess from above with his energy, but the Mother of the Universe, with the shout of her mantra, wounded him and deprived of life. The energy fell to the earth. When he found that his energy was broken, fickleness became intensely angry. Now he threw his pike at her, but the goddess cut it into arrows. In all of this, the lion of the goddess jumped upon the head of the elephant and began an intensive battle with that thought. Those 2 fought, and the elephant fell to the ground. Then they rose in excessive rage and began to fight again. Thereafter, with great speed, the lion leaped into the atmosphere and, falling from the sky, severed the head of fickleness from his body. Haughtiness, another demon, was slain by the goddess with stone and trees in the battlefield, and striking with his paws and biting with his teeth, the lion brought down disbelief. Striking angrily with her club, the goddess reduced arrogance to powder. Memories were cut by the sword, and anxiety blinded by her arrows. Violent temper and passion, and the great deceiver too, were slain by the 3-eyed seer of all. Hypocrisy's head was cut off by the sword, and irresistible temptation and foul mouth were both sent to the kingdom of death by her arrows. Seeing his army thus being destroyed, the great ego assumed the form of a buffalo, and he himself began to terrify the troops of the goddess. With his hoofs in the air, sometimes hitting with his tail, sometimes whirling around while ripping with his horns, with great speed and a great war cry, his breath puffing in exertion, he scattered the troops over the ground. Having laid low the troops of her army, that thought, the great ego, Mahesur, advanced to kill the lion of the goddess. Then the Mother of the Universe became angry. That great ego The great evil one also became angry. He kicked the earth with his hoofs and raised large mountains with his horns and threw them aside as he roared. With the great speed of this thought, the earth split in fear. His tail lashed the sea of desire, causing the waters to flood the earth. Tossing about his horns, he dashed and split the clouds to pieces, and cast up by the violent speed of his breath winds, mountains fell by the sky. And waging battle in this great anger, the great thought, the great ego, advanced toward her, while she who tears apart thought, Mother Chandi, assumed anger and prepared to slay him. Throwing her net, she bound that great thought. After being bound in that great encounter, he left his form as a buffalo. Thereafter, he manifested in the form of a lion. In this condition, the Mother of the Universe was prepared to cut off his head, but somehow he changed his form again to that of a man bearing a sword. Then the goddess instantly rained upon him a shower of arrows, and with sword and shield, she was ready to pierce him. Just then he took the form of the king of elephants. And with his trunk he began to pull the huge lion of the goddess and to roar, But as he was pulling, she cut the trunk with her sword. Then that great thought, Mahasur, again wore the body of a buffalo, and in the manner as before, with the inhalation and exhalation of his breath, he shook the three worlds. In great rage, the mother of the perceivable world, she who tears apart thought again and again, drank an excellent spirit, and with red eyes began to laugh. There in the strength and boldness of that wild ecstasy, that evil demon roared, with his horns threw mountains at she who tears apart thought. And she began to pulverize those mountains with her arrows of speech. Speaking in the ecstasy, her mouth became red and her tongue was stuttering. Roar and roar, you fool. Your death is in my hands, and when I have so much as and when your death is in my hands, and when I have finished drinking, soon the gods will be roaring. Thus speaking, the goddess leaped and ascended up above that great thought. Pressing down upon him and holding him with her foot, she struck him in the throat with his pike. The great ego, Mahasur, again hit by the foot of the goddess, changed his form from his mouth, but he was able to free only half of his body. And with her great strength, the goddess restrained that half as well. Even with the half of his body coming out, the great thought waged battle with the goddess. Then the goddess cut off his head with a great double-edged sword. Shrieking and crying, the remaining thoughts of that army ran away, and all the gods became exceedingly joyous. In great satisfaction, the gods joined the great seers in hymns of praise to the Divine Mother, the goddess, while the celestial chorus and nymphs sang and danced with joy. Om Mahalakshmi Mata Ki Jai, Ma Saraswati Mata Ki Jai, Mahadurga Mata Ki Jai, Ma Kali Mata Ki Jai, Haidakhan Mata Ki Jai.